different, considering every time I go down the hall, everyone says, the tech guy, the tech guy. So I kind of did a little tech. When Buster asked me to do this one, I came up with courage, and after reading the lesson and going all this, kind of come up with this plan, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to start out with the story. That's pretty good. While attending seminary in Fort Worth, Texas, I also pastored a church about 110 miles to the west, where my wife and I lived in the parsonage. This meant making a couple of trips each week for classes and returning on Wednesdays and Friday afternoon to go about my personal responsibilities. The schedule posted numerous challenges for us, especially in our first pastoral experiences, preparing for sermons and classes while also doing evangelistic visits and pastoral visits in homes and hospitals in this rural setting completely filled my schedule. One of the more memorable hospital visits opened on one of the return trips from seminary for the midweek prayer meeting. I stopped to see Jesse, one of our deacons who had been hospitalized with difficulties. Although this condition generally affects people who are older, this young man with 2 young children suffered from severe pain. As he talked with me about fear and he faced during the previous sleepless and painful-filled nights, Jesse told me that he learned the meaning of faith. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Pastor, faith is stepping out there where there isn't nothing but God." That pastoral visit took place more than 40 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. The Spirit of God had given Jesse the courage he needed to face his illness. His experiences prepared him to trust God for the future challenges he would face in his life. In today's message, Peter learned that he must not focus on the troubles around him, but to keep his eyes on Jesus. When we're going over all this, looking at it, I came up with one of the first questions I want to go over is, what is the definition of courage? What do you think courage means? Your definition of courage.
No fear.
No fear?
Doing what you need to do when you have fear.
The dictionary version of it is the mental, emotional, or moral strength of virtue, presence, and withstanding danger, fear, or difficulty. But there's also a biblical definition for fear. The biblical definition is a God-reliant strength of soul that acts in obedience despite fear, danger, or difficulty, rooted in trust in God's promise rather than self-reliance. So with the biblical form of fear, God did not try to... Are we supposed to handle it ourselves? No. Are we supposed to walk in and go, ugh? We're supposed to go with the courage of God. One thing I'm going to do is, the verses is Matthew 14, 22 to 33. I'm just going to go ahead and read it all right now as we go. 22. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and to go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." As Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous and he was afraid and began to sink, he cried out loud, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when he had gotten into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. All right. We're going to start this with fears, because at the beginning of it, I may not be reading straight from the book, so if you want to follow along and all that, as you're opening it talks about fears. It talks about different fears. Some of these fears are fun. Some of these fears are fears of bugs and insects.
Or birds.
Well, now here's the fun thing. The fear of insects, and I'm going to butcher this, so forgive me. Entomolophobia. That is the fear of bugs, insects, creepy crawlers. Then we have spiders. Most people know this one, mostly because it was a great movie, Arachnophobia. And all these fears are common. Some of the biggest ones. Fear of snakes. Yeah. This was a fun one. Ophidiodotophobia. And like I said, I'm probably butchering these names, these words. Fear of the dark. A lot of us have this, and even a lot of kids, but some people even as we did. Nisatophobia. It's the fear of the dark. Fear of crowds. Now that one's pretty much good. This is aclophobia. I have no idea where they come up with these words. Fear of illness. We have a lot of this, especially as we're getting older, getting sick. This is nosophobia. And this isn't the fear of, I've got a thing and I'm just don't know what's there. This is an actual fear, I'm getting sick. Maybe my heart's what's going to happen? Fear of heights. I used to not have that. As I got older and got a broken back, ladders scare me.
That's smart.
This is acrophobia. And then
Wisdom.
drowning.
Yeah.
This comes to a lot of people, and some people won't even go near even water because of it. This is aquaphobia. This is the one that actually makes sense. Public speaking. Some people just has a hard time going up and talking. This is glossophobia, which also leads to the fear of teaching a Sunday school class. After that, pronouncing words. This is a good one. You actually have a one called verbophobia. For the pronouncing words, or trying to pronounce words out of the Bible when you're doing a Sunday school lesson. Finally, all right, everyone, calm down. It's not going to be bad. Fear of long words. The longest word in the English dictionary is the fear of long words. I've been trying this. Hippopotomonstrous equipated alephobia. I sure did. But these are, a lot of common fears. Now, here's one that a lot of people have, and so hang on if I scare you, I apologize. The fear of clowns. This is, like I said, the fear of pronunciation. Curlophobia. So all these are legitimate fears. And what people don't realize when you're dealing with fears, it's a physical stress on your body. Fears can cause anxiety, panic attacks, heart rates can go up, not thinking straight. You can run in terror. Fear's a lot of things. And in some cases, fear can even kill you. There has been documented cases where someone was scared so bad that they had a heart attack. And we have all these fears. But what we're going to study in this class for today is that though we have these fears, we have someone to combat our fears that will be with us. Basically, when you get down to the question, it says, what do you consider to be some of your biggest fears? It could be something as simple as what was on this list. You know, I'll admit, I get a little, now I can still go up high, but I still get a little queasy up there going, spiders don't scare me much, but they do gross me out. But mostly my biggest fear is sometimes I get afraid when someone comes in and asks for help and I gotta say no. I'm afraid that I'm gonna disappoint them, that I'm not gonna do it right. Preparing for this lesson, not doing it justice and all that. So these are some of my fears. What's some of your fears if someone's willing to say it?
I'm a fear of birds. Real fear of birds.
You watch the old black and
I
white?
did.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I did, the birds.
That left a mark back in the day,
Big mark.
didn't it? Yeah.
I had to run home, I watched it and had to walk my girlfriend home in the dark. I had to come back. I mean, that's all it is.
I think it was John F. Kennedy said, the only thing we have to fear is
Fear
fear.
itself.
And fearing of the unknown is a fear. I'm surprised that wasn't on that list.
Oh, this is my list that I made up myself.
Right.
I was just,
Well, I'm talking about it in here.
Oh, yeah, but,
Fear of the unknown is,
And the
Mine
fear
was
of manufactured fear of what I think women, I guess men do it too, but that what's gonna happen with your great kids, your grands, and imagining.
Yeah.
You get yourself worked up and nothing's even,
When my boys were still living at home and they were out, I would look out the window and just, you know, just be afraid that something was happening. And you finally said, you're gonna have to put God's hand, get them home safe.
I fear being alone.
here's a,
Not all bad. Not all bad.
could be a good thing at times.
I even read one time there was a name for fear of getting peanut butter stuck on the roof of your mouth. There was a phobia for that.
We haven't got that, have we?
Robin don't have that one either.
And kind of going over this, there are thousands of fears. But here's a fear that some Christians have, and I even admit I have a fear of. Am I truly saved?
yeah.
I mean, it goes through your mind. You're going, yes, I believe. Yes, I confess. I earnestly confess. For some people, even me, I rededicated my life over it and all that. But when you look back into your past, what you've done, and shoot, what you just did last week that you shouldn't have done, or last night, you know, or tomorrow, and you're kind of always wondering, am I really saved? You know, those are legitimate fears that go into your minds.
I'm glad you brought that up, Brent. That's one thing that I worry about myself, and I didn't know if everybody else did or not.
I know, it's probably, was right after, probably 2 or 3 years after I got saved, I was talking to an old lady that was a member of the church. She was an elderly lady. And I said something to her about sometimes I wonder about my salvation. She says, well, how can you wonder about something if you've never had it? That's just a ploy that that devil's putting in your head
Yeah.
to make you.
Michelle and I have discussed this a lot, and I've always, I can't remember that, you know, people say, oh, this is the day that I was saved. Thank God I was raised in a Christian home. I don't remember the exact day, you know, the date, but I know in my heart what I believe. And you're right, it's the devil that puts that doubt in you.
But, you know, it's kind of like she told me, once she said, you know, how can you, wonder about something if you've never had it? Because you want to know what it felt like, you want to know if you was missing something or not. But the day I got saved, I'll never forget the way I felt that day.
And it also can be hard, especially if you were like me, saved young. I was saved in the corner of my closet one Saturday afternoon. And don't knock it, that closet was the best corner I ever had. It was a rocket ship, a tank, a battlefield, spaceship. And one morning it became the day I just talked to God. But it's hard to remember when you're 10 years old sometimes that true feeling because time does it. But the good thing about that sphere, we know it's there because it's stated in the Bible. God has told us, if you legitimately were saved, you will always be saved. And this is, when I do some things and all that, keep in mind, I may not be right. So, and all that. But it's my belief is when we do something wrong and we're a little bit later going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's the Holy Spirit condemning us. If it was something that's a prime thing that goes along nowadays is pornography. It's now become almost, if you don't watch it, or something's wrong with you. Well, if you watch it as a Christian and you're feeling guilty, but if you're just not a Christian, it's like, oh, that's cool. So the Bible does tell us that we are saved. And another fear that comes around, my mom had it, I didn't, but my grandmother did, and it's the fear of dying.
It's not the fear of dying, it's what state am I going to be in? Will I have dementia? A sound body?
Yeah, will I really be able to run and walk?
Who I am, who you are. That does. When we watched his mom, she lives 101 with vascular dementia.
Wow.
And it's harder on the family. You know, you don't want your family to have to go through that. But that, I guess that's my biggest fear. What's going to happen to me before I die? What?
With me, death never really has caused me to be afraid. When it comes to salvation and all that, is I'm afraid of eternity in heaven.
Oh no.
You think about it, in eternity. I get bored. Or what's going to happen? What are we going to do? These are all rational fears, and they're nothing to be ashamed of. Never be ashamed of a fear. Now, once we get down to understanding the text, the beginning of this is going out of sort of back to give you a preview of what's coming on for the actual lesson and the things. It opens up with Matthew 14, and it's basically a flashback. What has happened at this point is that John the Baptist had been beheaded. When you read the lesson, there's this good thing that right here where it talks about Herod Antipas was the son of Herod the Great. He was a Roman appointed ruler over the province of Galilee and Peru. Jews hated him because he was not Jewish. His father, Herod the Great, was Idiom, and his mother was a Samaritan. Herod Antipas was denounced by John the Baptist because of his marriage to Herodias. Herodias had been the wife of Philip, half-brother to Antipas. She was also the niece of Anaphos, Solian, like I said, big ears. Herodias' daughter tricked him into having John the Baptist beheaded. That gave me a fear right there, which is when I just read that little half that paragraph, trying to figure it out. I was able to kind of bring this down, but it got confusing. Basically, what was happening was Herod Antipas was now the ruler. His wife, Herodias, was basically his brother-in-law's wife. Remarried, basically my brother's wife and all that. And this made John call him out. Hey, this was wrong. What you did was wrong and all that. And the Jews didn't like him anyway. He began to basically feel it. And most of his attacks was going against Herodias, the wife, not just Herod. During a big celebration, Herodias' daughter went out and gave a big dance. Performed and all this. And when he had done that, Herod was so pleased and like, yes, he goes, I will give you whatever you like. You name what you want and I will get it. I'm the king. Well, her mom went up to her, whispered in her and said, in her ear, and basically said, I want John's head. So she went, told Herod, I want John's head. Now, back then, to keep in mind is when a king said he will do something, by law, he had to do it, even if he didn't want to. And in doing this, he had John executed, even though he didn't really want to do it. But he also didn't want to avoid confrontations and the people. So with that, now, John has just died. Jesus has received the news of his death. So he realizing that he's not ready to quite deal with the crowds just yet. His brother or, cousin, his cousin had just been murdered. So he grabbed his disciples, got into a boat, and went to the Sea of Galilee. And bringing it up, they found this, and they call it the Jesus boat.
I think it's mentioned there with Brad.
Yeah.
Oh, did you know? Did you know the next page?
Could be. So this is probably maybe not the boat, but a boat similar to this was what Jesus and his disciples went. They went on the Sea of Galilee, and they're basically going up the coast. Now, as they're sailing up the coast, the crowds are following. There maybe half a mile off the coast. They could probably see the boats, and as they travel up, and finally Jesus decides it's time. They come ashore, and during this becomes one of the greatest miracles that was mentioned, is the feeding of the multitude. That's also the Sermon of the Mount. So he delivers this sermon, the great miracle. At this time, all these people are probably looking at Jesus. They wanted, let's see, I wrote this down. Wrong page. They wanted him to basically end up becoming his king. They wanted a priest, a ruler, a king to come in. And Jesus is going, this is not the time. This is not the time to go over this in my ministry and all that. So with this, we get into the start of 22, verse 22. Jesus has basically, and one note that I found for this is, of all the gospel writers, the 4 gospels, Luke is the only one that actually did not tell the story of Jesus walking on the water. The other ones, the other 3, talked of this miracle as well. So we get up to verse 22, starting this. These verses is looking immediately after the feeding and all that. In your third verse it says, the phrase, immediately he made disciples get into the boat. Which means he's probably beginning to see these crowds being stirred up. Some are getting political. And his disciples are still young. They're going to be looking at him, and they're probably getting stirred up as well. Plus the fact the entire reason for this trip was for him to get away and kind of mourn John's death and talk to God. So he sends them away. The term that came up... where was it? Is the Greek verb for this to made is to basically forcefully leave or compelled strongly. So him immediately wasn't just, it was almost him going, guys, get in the boat, go. Then he turned to the crowd and basically said to them, go. And with that, Christ then went up and began to pray. Now, when we're reading this, we're coming up and it talks about the fears that the disciples were having. What were some of the fears that the disciples had? According to the text, basically it's the question, when you're reading the text, what are some of the examples of the fears that you find in this text?
The wind was great against them.
Yeah, we got the wind, storms,
The night,
the darkness.
Waves.
Yep, that can waves.
Thought he was a ghost.
Spirits, fear of spirits.
Fear of drowning.
Drowning. These are all fears that we're going through. Now, if you look at that boat, if you're looking at a sea, Galilee can almost be considered more like a Great Lake. So we're talking a big thing that storms hit. The coast of the Galilee Sea was covered by mountains here and over there, some valleys, which caused at times a lot of wind currents and storms to come flooding into the Sea of Galilee. And when they would come, they can come quickly. So they're in this little bitty boat, and you figure there's 12 of them. And they're out there and they're just a-rowing. Then it says that as they went out into the morning. Now, Jesus went up into the mountains. We're figuring it's roughly maybe getting close to evening. He sent them home. He's gone up into the mountains, and he begins his time of prayer. We don't know what he prayed or what it was. We'll never know until we ask him about it. It could have been praying for his disciples because he knew what was coming. Now the disciples are heading out into the ocean. Right now, it's calm. These disciples knew a good chunk of them were seamen. You know, they fishermen. They've been on the Sea of Galilee. So probably storms and all that, the night didn't bother them much. They were used to it. And during verse 22, there's this clause that I want to make sure we got is Matthew used an unusually vocal verb to describe the actions of Jesus. He made the disciples leave the scene. Again, I want to stress, they were being thrown out and gone. Then we get to verse 23. And what little bit you can follow along back on 12 page. With this one, after dismissing the crowd, Jesus went by himself to pray. This had been his intention before the crowd interrupted him with a request of healing. Matthew 14:13. Jesus sought solitude after hearing the news of the death of John. Remember, when Jesus was fully God, he was also fully man and experienced the same wide range of emotions we do. Prayer was a regular part of Jesus' life, but this was on an occasion of a special need for prayer. Despite his need to rest, Jesus prayed long into the night. This brings up what Pastor Kelly said.
Yeah.
Jesus understood our fears. Jesus mourned for John. You know, he was heartbroken. Also, he could be sitting up there going, this is really beginning, his sermons and his teachings are really beginning to amp up and going out. So even with Jesus, prayer was a regular part of his life. So we need to keep that as a regular part of our life. Jesus prayed for strength, courage. So why wouldn't we? I mean, if Jesus asked, Lord, help me. Lord, take this cup from me if you can. Because you knew he was afraid when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane making that prayer. He was terrified of what's coming. He knew what pain's going to feel like. So if he can pray, we should be able to pray just as hard, if not harder, and knowing that he will be there. Now we come to verse 24 with it. Matthew's narrative next turned attention to disciples who were struggling in the boat. So now we're kind of go from Jesus on the hill to them in the sea in the boat. When they reached a distance from the shore, the text literally called it many stadia away. The measure unit stationed was approximately 600 feet. There was also none say that it could also be up to maybe a couple miles out to sea, not just the 600. John's gospel indicates that they had rowed for perhaps 3 hours, or if not even more. There was another context that I found that it could have been they've been rowing all night long. Now we're getting to, then it says, however, as they rowed, the wind was against them and pushed them further from the destination. The Sea of Galilee was notorious for its intense squalls that swept down from the slopes of Mount Hermon and the other mountains surrounding the lake. The severity of the storm is seen further in the words battered by the waves, which would be translated as waves tormented disciples. Mark 6:48 states the disciples were groaning at the oars. So I don't know how many of you've been on the sea or one of Great Lakes or even a big lake when you had some winds coming, especially if you're in a sailboat. They could be going in circles. Also, keep in mind, during this time, they didn't have compasses. They didn't have sextants or anything like that. All they had was the stars, the sun, and the moon. And during a storm, you don't even have that. So they could have just been going in circles. And this fear arose from them. Then we get to 25 and 26. After Jesus had spent an immense time in prayer, basically with this, it talks about almost all night long, because they talk about with it, it's coming towards the third watch. When he decides that he's finished praying, and keep in mind, he has prayed from probably say 6, 7 o'clock at night to maybe 3 a.m. I mean, that we're talking many, many hours. How many times, and this is one of my fear too, sometimes my prayer is only about a minute, maybe 2. Now, I will say this, my grandmother, Nana, for those of you newer, Anita Martin, if you don't know Nana, she prayed. I remember going in to say goodnight to her when she went to bed. If I walked in there and I heard her praying, I just went, sat down, got a book, finished 4 chapters, finished another chapter, and then finally she was done. I mean, there are some people that can truly pray. I wish I could. I'll admit, I'd love to be able to pray like that. But the great thing about it is the Holy Spirit prays for us also. So what we don't say, but we feel, and then, like Pastor Kelly said, we have a high priest that prays for us as well. So with this, Jesus is now finished, and he's come down the mountain. He probably went up to the edge of the mountain, looked over, and saw his little dinghy going in circles, and he probably even heard him crying out. Maybe literally heard him crying out in the storm. With this, they're talking about this time could probably be about 3 or 6 in the morning. So depending on the year, which we don't know, the sun could be getting ready to break, or it could still be dark as it came up. Then it says in verse 25 and 26, Jesus finally came to them very early in the morning. The Greek translation sets the time to be around the 4th watch, which would be sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning. So this also states that the disciples have been in this storm for hours. Almost all night long they've been fighting this storm. Now when you're doing this, keep this in mind. This isn't the first storm that they've been in with Jesus. Remember, the first storm was they went out there, storm came up, we're going to drown, Lord, Master, wake up, we're all going to die, save us. Jesus comes up and said, be calm. So they're kind of used to Jesus in storms, but yet still, they're just going back to their old ways. Probably fighting the oars, trying to do this, arguing, Simon might be going, no, we need to go port. Peter's going, no, we need to go aft. Is it aft? Or starboard, or whatever. You can tell I don't.
We got the point.
So they're arguing and all of that. Now Jesus is coming out and he's going to be coming up to them. And this is one of, like I said, except for Luke, all the other Gospels talk about basically the walking on the water. When we come to this, I want to kind of have an image with it, and that's coming up. We've all had this image of Jesus walking on the water. How many of you think that's Jesus walking up and
Oh, it gives you peace, doesn't
yeah, I worked hard on it.
That's good, Rick. That's all right.
This is wrong. You could see Jesus from miles away, and if they're in there, they're going to be looking at it and they'll be going, "Oh, Jesus is coming. We're safe." This is probably what they're seeing. Lightning, wind, storms, waves, tossing. They're wet. They're being soaked. And in the middle of all that, they see a figure walking towards them. Probably, most likely, we don't know how he was dressed, but we know he's in light clothing because in that region you wore white for the heat and all that. And they talk about it saying that he was a spirit. And this is when the fear came on. When the disciples saw Jesus walking on the sea, they cried out in fear. There was no mistaking what they saw. All disciples saw the figure on the water. In fact, the Greek word saw means to stare intently. They were probably even arguing. How many of them was going to go, "Hey, Matthew, did you say that?" Peter's going, "It's a ghost." Someone else is going, "No, ghosts aren't real, but demons are. It's a demon coming at us." You know, so they're arguing and they're fighting each other in this fear. This was not a passing glance. So they had, and you figure if he's walking almost a mile or more, and I figure that the one good thing about the first video was right, he was just probably calmly walking through the water, you know. So you can kind of understand that the fear that they're having when they're seeing Jesus coming towards them, walking on the water. And with this, they're crying out. And then we get to verse 27. When the disciples cried out in terror and fear, Jesus immediately called out to them. His words were intended to encourage them and allay their fears. "Have courage," he said, "it is I." Literally, Jesus declared, "I am," using the divine name of God in Exodus 3:14. With his short explanation, Jesus was hinting at the presence of the great I am, the Lord God Almighty. This was God himself who was with them during the wind and the waves. There was no need to be afraid. The disciples may not have recognized Jesus as he walked toward them among the mist and the waves, but the moment he spoke, they recognized their master's voice. What I love about this part is he's basically saying, throughout his ministry, he is at times saying, "I am God." Some of the Muslims like to put in their Quran and say that Jesus was not God. Jesus was, like some people like to say, a little God, or God with a little g. He was a prophet and all this. And they say, "Oh, it's never mentioned in the Bible that he's a God." But we're seeing throughout it that he is saying, "I am God." And this is one of those times he is saying, "I am God. Hear me, and I am coming for you." Then we got here's the question. When was Jesus present? Fear of not getting your sentences right. When has Jesus' presence been especially meaningful for you? When in your life has just the fact that Jesus was there been meaningful for you?
Mine's been very recent. It was during my diagnosis and surgery. That was very powerful.
When I was going through pre-cancer in the mid-80s, I was praying in the night, and I looked up and I saw Jesus at the foot of my bed just as plain as day. I did.
When my mother was leaving us, going home to Jesus.
I wasn't there for this, but my mom told me when my grandfather passed, they were in the hospital and she had gone down to the chapel with some family and friends. And she was praying, you know, her dad's dying, you know, all this. And then she recounted this, but I'd also heard one of the women that was with her that night, I draw a blank on her name, said that mom felt a physical hand touching her. And everyone else said they felt a physical presence of someone comforting, you know, all that. So when things are bad, when the storm is raging, look to God. Look to Christ. He will be there. Now, he's also said there will be storms. You know, as much as we'd like to go, I'm a Christian, I can just sit back and enjoy my wings that I'm going to get in about a few years or so. No, we're to still live our lives. And we live in a world that has fallen. As much as we'd love for it not to be, we're fallen in a fallen world. But Christ is our salvation, and He is our rock.
If we as Christians didn't have trials or things that happen in our lives that we really have to depend on Him, if you think about it, we really wouldn't be a witness to others for what He does for us.
Sometimes when you're looking at it, your hard times can be more of a witness. Not the fact that you did something really good or whatever, but sometimes just the fact that you walked through it. You know, with me, you know, a lot of you know my broken back and all that. Just going, you know, that I have never given up. I have no anxiety in my back. Let me rephrase that. You know, first hitting me that first year was kind of tough. You know, I was going a lot of why me, Lord. You know, good example of this would be some of you that in WMU, when my mom was there, used to come to our house for Christmas. And at this time, I would cook the Christmas dinner for them. Well, I was sitting there in the kitchen and I'm getting my champagne chicken and everything out to put on the table. And for those of you who don't know, my kitchen's here. Say this was my oven. There's an open and there's the dining room and living room. So I could hear them talking. You know, I wasn't eavesdropping or anything like that. Well, it's my house. And then I heard my mom talking. She was telling, I think it was Mary Ann, to be honest. She was saying, you know what? Brent is just an answer to my prayer. I mean, I don't know what I'll be doing with him not taking care of mom. He's just answered my prayer. Now I'm sitting there doing this. Already my back's hurting. Can't work. And of course, me being me, I stopped and went, Lord, her prayer? You answer hers? What about mine? What about me? You know? But then I look back, because of my back, I was able to take care of my grandmother up into her end. I was able to take care of mom up into her end. And even now it seems like I'm taking care of Donna up into my end.
I'm gonna tell her you said that.
I'm recording it. She's going to watch it. So there's a lot of fears that we have and all this. And this is leading up to Jesus. Jesus has popped up. He's come in. And so with this, Peter now realizes that, hey, it's Christ. This is my master. And he decides that he's going, he's seen walked out, he's going, basically, Jesus, Master, Rabbi, command me to come out to you to meet you. I love Peter. Peter is the true definition of some Christians. He can be hot-headed, he can deny God, but yet he can have some of the strongest faith. In that, Peter was the only one that said, me, Lord, call me out. I want to walk on water too. So Jesus basically says, come on out. And Jesus gets out of that boat and he starts walking. Now, we don't know how far he was from the boat. I'm guessing it wasn't 5 feet. It might have been double this room. And they're walking together. And then when you're reading it as you're going into the lesson, basically he's out in the storm, and then Peter soon realizes the situation outside the boat was radically different than the inside the boat. You figure he was almost getting seasick in the boat. Now he has waves crossing his legs and bombarding him. Quickly, he became distracted by the wind, and his faith and confidence wavered. As his doubts began to sink in, Peter cried out, Lord, save me. These words, save me, were the same words used by disciples in the previous storm. Basically, I guess Peter just knew what he was saying. Lord, save us again. I'd have, once again, no faith. With that. And the question is, what step of faith are you prayerfully considering right now? What's going on in your life right now that might be fearful? And you, be honest, you don't know what the future holds.
I want to pray for the lost boy that I have.
Mm-hmm. With me, kind of on a personal, I'm worried about Donna. I mean, she's getting better and all that, but that's still, when you're seeing someone in pain, you don't know what the future is. And all you know is you got to be there to help them. Some other fears could be like the Middle East, what's going on. How about this fear of something coming up? Fear of persecution.
We just don't know. Like, I was reading the news today, if there is sleeper cells in our country that's going to pop up.
I don't think it's it, I think they
it
are.
is.
Oh, I'm sure they're here.
Yeah, I mean, when,
Yeah.
you find yourself kind of looking around when you're going in a store.
I think I saw right before I came up with Cash Patel at the alert. The terror alert was on high alert now, so.
And what, I know Russia's probably spent with what they're doing over in Europe, but China, Russia, North Korea.
Well, Mexico,
Could-
and they've got everybody
Yeah.
out of Mexico now.
I mean, what if they decide to join in the fray?
And this is the world that we're living in. And like I was, we don't know the fear of persecution, but we're beginning to feel the taste of it. I mean, right now we don't have to worry about being dragged out of our homes and thrown in jail, or beaten, or even murdered. But we are being persecuted. We're being called every name in the book. We're being told we're intolerant. And we're being attacked more and more. And there will come a time that being Christian is a death sentence. Basically, in the book of Revelation, you will have a time where we will have to choose either one or two marks. And if we choose mark of Christ, we will be either starved to death, hunted down, and killed. But they'll call it an execution because of treasons. So that is a legitimate fear. We're looking at it now with doing that.
Well, I don't ever remember going to church as a little girl and really got, people patrolling the parking lot and armed. And most every church now has that, so
I mean, right now, just in our church alone, we have a security team, and several of them are armed. because we just don't know. Because we have begun to see people coming in and killing people in a church simply because they say, I love Christ and He is my Savior. And this is what gets the world. He is the only way to salvation.
Amen.
There is no other. We can try to be as good. We can't buy our way. We can't plead our way. We can't just be good. There definitely isn't a reincarnation. I do not want to come back as a slug. I want to go to heaven and walk the streets of gold. So because we are that, people are actually out getting us. Now, Peter has walked out. He's walking. I like to think he's kind of strutting. He finally can look back. See, guys, you should have come out of the boat with me. And then he sees the waves, and then he sees the storm, the lightning cracking in the background. And what is he looking at? He's looking at the water, the waves, the wind.
Took his eyes off of
He
Jesus.
took his eyes off Jesus. And what happened? He began to sink. Now I got a little thing. Michelle, I need to borrow you for a second.
You don't want people.
How? I've already got one.
You're gonna get us all in trouble one of these days.
Michelle, this reminds
You're good right there.
Uh-uh.
I got a box here. Now, do you trust me? Are you afraid of me?
Michelle,
Yeah.
remember that question, what step of faith are you ready?
That's not good.
There is something in this box.
It is not good.
Wait a minute, just in case. I'm prepared.
Boy, you gotta be kidding me. I got a gun.
Now, I'm going to open this box. Are you ready?
Yeah, kind of,
Kinda?
sort of. Oh, Lord.
You were afraid, weren't you?
Yeah, just a little bit when it came out.
The box was the ocean and Christ coming forward. When you first saw the box, you really didn't think much about it. When this came out, your eyes went from the box and probably the do not open sign. Your eyes went off. This little demonstration is to show how easy it is to take our eyes off God. I mean, we love to come up and say, Lord, I'll follow you. I'll never take my eyes off you. I'm with you. And when it comes down to it, it's so easy to be distracted. Fear is one emotion that you can go your life without love. Be honest. I mean, it's hard because you can find a love of money or a love of something like that, but you can go without true love. Fear is something that will always pop into anyone's life, and we're having to deal with fear in all that we do. So I kind of did that to really show that how Peter was easy. You're in a closed room with a box. Peter was in the middle of the Galilee Sea in the middle of a storm.
Just call me Chicken Little.
Sky Paul.
I'll be honest, I had thought about putting some plastic spiders in there, but no, I'm not going to be that mean. So now we get to this story that Peter's screaming, Lord, Lord, help me. I'm drowning, I'm sinking. Now this is what I love with it is, what did Jesus do? Did Jesus go, you know what, Peter? Come on, get a little faith. I'm here. Stand up. You can walk. No. He immediately, this is what I image. He runs up to Peter, sends out his hand. Maybe Peter's down to his waist now, grabs him, and he's pulling him up. That's the way Jesus does for us. He doesn't just go, I'll be there when I get finished with Tommy over here. He's got a little bigger problem. He's there immediately. Now, when he's there, does he immediately solve the problem?
Not necessarily.
No. I've learned this when it comes to prayer and all that. You get 3 answers. Yes, no, or 4 answers. No, yes, no, later. And we at times, I've said some prayers in the past that, yeah, I'm really glad he said no. And then there's times that he said yes, but I'm going, you really took a long time to get there. And sometimes we have to wait.
Pretty quick, though.
Yeah, sometimes it
That's
can
the
be.
amazing thing.
Those are the amazing. And I'll admit, sometimes I get a little jealous when you hear some people go, I made this prayer and then I prayed, Lord, I can't pay my bill. Next thing you know, God knocks on the door and says, you know what, I was thinking about you. Here, for your rent. You know, so you do get jealous at times, but God will always be there. He's standing there right now. With this lesson, as much as I butchered the words and all this, I knew He's been with me and helping me to deliver this sermon. Now, when we get to it, God just doesn't, like I said, immediately save you like He did Peter. So sometimes we do have to wait. How do you tend to respond to Jesus' power when you experience it? How do you respond when something miraculous or you felt the answer to a prayer, whether it was good, yes, no, later? What's the feeling you get?
I get cold chills.
It confirms He's real.
Yep. Now, do you need to be confirmed that it's real? Do you
Well-
have to have, if you say a prayer, do you have to have Him answer it?
No.
But yet, do you still feel the same way? When I'm talking about with confirming that He's there and all that. Do you still feel the same way whether you hear an answer or not? Because sometimes your answer could be 10 years down the road.
Yeah, I hope I do.
Well, it says God's ways are not our ways, so, I mean, we just
His timing's not
have to
always
trust
either.
and wait on Him to
Patience comes in.
make that Garth Brooks song.
That is also a nice. That's also a nice big fear. Is, will I still have the faith when He says no, or He says later? I mean, it is so easy for us to reach our hand up, Christ grab us, pull us out of the surf. And it's so easy at that time to worship Him, to thank Him, to love Him, to embrace Him. The hard times is when He just gives you a life jacket and says, swim. I'm still there. You ain't going to go under, but you're going to be up to your neck swimming. That's when it's tough and hard to still keep your eyes on Jesus. And be honest, that's when we need to do it. Well, actually, no. We like to say that's when you need to have the faith the most. You need to have the exact same faith, whether He's there reaching for you immediately or He's just giving you a life preserver. Those are the hard things to go with.
But sometimes the ones that will surprise you the most are things that happen that you look back and say, I've been praying for that a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Or me and some of my friends have been praying for this for years. And it'll pop up and you'll realize that it was on His time.
Yeah.
But He heard you.
I
Well, we have to
pray.
realize too that His will for us is not to harm us. I mean, He tells us in His Word that
I want
it's
great
not to
things for
harm
you.
but it's to help to make you prosper. So, and that prosper may not come in the time that we're looking for.
I'm looking at close to 30 years now, praying for no pain. And it seems like each day there's more.
But there'll come a day
And
you
then,
won't have any.
and then I've also prayed for almost 30 years for a date too. That did come true. You know.
You want more pain.
Yeah, I know. I love you, Donna.
I didn't say a name.
Get ready, Dad.
That is recorded too, by the way.
So is that live?
No, it's
Live or recorded?
recorded. So,
You better edit that.
so now Peter has been pulled from the sea, and he's gotten Peter. He's probably now walking his arm across his shoulder to the boat, and they get into the boat. What happens immediately when they get into the boat? Calm seas. Now, this is probably morning. The sun is now coming out. That first image of Jesus walking on the water. That might be it now. Nice little surfs, the sun's coming up, and they're all in there. And they're coming in. Now, the difference between this one and the first storm was, first storm, Jesus said, be calm. Now he didn't even have to talk. The seas knew exactly what they wanted, or he wanted them to do. And it was calm. And when he comes into the boat, he ends up doing? Basically, he's looking at all of them, Peter too. Ye of so little faith. I mean, that always hits so hard as we're sitting there doing it. Not knowing how strong we could be, going, I failed again. Think about when he said that to Peter. I mean, the other disciples stayed in the boat, and they're sitting there probably going, well, at least we didn't sink. But the storm's gone. And he did it last time there, didn't he? And Peter's sitting there going, I was out there with him. I was walking on water. And then I thought of the world. So, it's tough to have faith. All the time. And when we're going over this, keep in mind that we're going to fail. We're going to say, why, Lord? We're going to say, help me, and it not come. But know this, whether we doubt or we have fear, one, all we have to do is pray, and God will give us the strength. Problem may not go away, but you will discover when you make those prayers, for some reason, you're not quite as afraid.
You have a peace.
You get a peace within you. And then you all get a strength, and you go, I can get out of bed this morning. As much as I don't want to, but I can get out of bed. And we might get chastised. That feeling at times you have when you've made a mistake and all that, or fear, think of it as God saying, ye of little faith. Just believe in me. I think that's just about my lesson today. We get down to applying the text, and these are, again, manifold. We can trust Jesus to walk with us in the storms of life. No matter what storm you're in, whether it's just the little waves or it's a hurricane with gale force winds, we're not walking alone. He is with us, and He is protecting us, and His will is divine. His will happen. No matter what the devil and his guiles say or put into your mind, God's already won. You know. When Jesus issues an invitation, we can step out with confidence, knowing that He is with us. Now, this one's a good, hard one to think about, because there's one other fear that's out there that I'll save it for last. The fear of sharing your faith to a complete stranger. How many of you have maybe been on a bus or a plane sitting next to someone, or in a restaurant, and in the back of your head you're hearing, I should tell them about Jesus, or at least ask, but you keep your mouth shut. And I do that a lot myself. Sometimes it's not that we don't want to share Him or anything like that. It's one of the biggest thing is they're going to laugh at me or they're going to condemn me. But we need to step out of our own comfort zones, to step with faith that whether they listen or not, you're doing what God's will. One thing I have done a little bit, basically, Dennis Nunn did it, is when you're out at a restaurant, ask to pray for your waitress, or we can pray for you. I haven't done it all the time, but I've done it several times, and guess what? It wasn't scary. Well, it was up until you asked. But they didn't ridicule me. They didn't. Sometimes one of them even said, "Yeah, I can pray for this." Some would say, "Yep, I go to church and all this," and then it's just some will go, "Don't need it." And that's when they walk away. That's when you pray for them. And the final point is Jesus' power should lead us to worship Him. Now, when they got back into the boats, the final thing that they did when the seas was calm was they looked at Him and they worshiped Him. They realized this is God. This is the Christ. This is the Messiah. He's not just a rabbi. As Kelly stated, He's our high priest. So, at all times, worship Him because He is God. And God will get us through all situations.
Brent, I have had just a little bit.
Oh, please.
Back to when he told me I had pre-cancer. He told me that what would happen would they would take skin off my legs and everything and so forth. And my answer to him was, what if it doesn't attach? He said, if it doesn't attach, you're gone. So I prayed and prayed. And he was very good. I mean, he was a very good doctor. And I had just got him from church one Sunday. He called. And that showed what kind of doctor he is. He called. And when I answered, I was in the kitchen. And I said, let me go to the bedroom. When I went to the bedroom, I fell on my knees. He said, Mary, I don't know what happened, but you do not have cancer, pre-cancer, anything.